Prior to returning to the farm, they lived in Orange, Andrew running his own small business and Jodie working in agribusiness banking. They took over the management and ownership of Aleoburn at the beginning of 2012 when Andrew's parents retired. Aleoburn at that stage comprised of about 3,500 acres and running 2,000 breeding ewes. With a combination of additional lease country, they've now expanded that operation to running 9,000 ewes and a considerably larger area. Andrew, Jodie and their son Tom, who joined the family business in 2020, can constantly set goals and are always open to new initiatives, research and ideas. Their passions are breeding vigorous, resilient sheep with stylish wool who are able to thrive in many of Australian environments and who can meet many market opportunities and restorative care of their land. So welcome, Jodie.
Thanks very much, Jeff. When I was asked to step in to replace Andrew and Tess Herbert as the keynote speakers today, I was actually quite chuffed because has been they are people who have actually been significant people in my past. As you heard in my introduction, in my previous career I worked in agribusiness banking and I had the opportunity of working with Andrew and Tess Herbert for many years. I saw how they dealt with all myriad of challenges as they manoeuvred their business through significant growth over the years. Their deep knowledge of the fundamentals of their business always held them in good stead to be able to make nimble decisions and optimise opportunities. And over the last 10 years, as we've grown our business, I've often thought of them and what their approach to things would be and how they would deal with challenges and be able to assess risk to get through. So it was quite a pleasure to think about them and their involvement in my life. Wrong way. Oh yes. So we need to go past that. Can I go back to the first slide? Do I need? And then next one, yes. Okay. Our soil, and also that should have said our pastures, because with the focus being on pasture establishment, which is the key thing to what we do, having good pastures allows us to run good sheep. So these days Aleoburn comprises of 4,000 acres, and we have an additional 3,200 acres just down the road from Aleoburn known as Lake Cullerville. We also complement our farming and grazing operation with additional lease country. Our pastures incorporate a mixture of lucerne, subclovers, clovers and medics. And in recent years we have been incorporating bicerula and chicory and experimenting with various grasses such as Premier Digit grass, bambatsi, purple pigeon grass and tall wheat grass. In 2012, in order to start expanding our business so that we could work through our succession planning with Andrew's parents, we took on the lease of a property at Coolaman, which comprised 3,500 acres. At the time of taking on that property, it had been 100% cropped, and by the time we finished there in 2021, it was 100% pasture. Taking on the lease of that farm, allowed us to take our ewe numbers in the first stage from 2,000 ewes to 5,000 ewes, and that had been getting to 5,000 ewes had been our initial first goal. We then also took on another lease property in 2019, which was 5,800 acres at Narrandera, so much closer to home than the Coolaman property. We had both properties for a period of 2 years, and we used that opportunity to while we still had the Coolaman property, to re-establish pastures on the Narrandera property. We also came into the drought, as you'll recall, in 2018, and that was the first year that we had achieved our 5,000 breeding ewe number. So we were absolutely adamant that we weren't going to sell any of our ewes, and with taking on all advice that was available to deal with the drought, of destocking in a timely manner. We absolutely held on to our ewes, and we made a very firm decision that that's what we were going to do, because we had taken 6 years to get to that number and we didn't want to lose any of our breeding ewes at that point in time. So we started the process of establishing pastures on the second property as well, which was absolutely, completely bare. Could you actually put up the video again now of no, not that one, that one. So in 2019, when we took on the new place at Narrandera, that is what it looked like, the whole place. There was a dust storm that day. That was one day in February 2019. We were driving around the property to check out the water points and decide that, yes, we'd take on this place, and we thought that's a fairly big task at hand. We commenced a crop rotation on that place then as well. We typically run a low-cost, low-risk farming program where we have moved away from the significant use of nitrate-based fertilisers and use products such as liquid humus in the form of fulvic acid to help build soil biology and soil health. And we also use a myriad of various summer grazing crops to get some diversity and some deep-rooted crops into the ground. Our crop rotation is typically vetch, wheat, barley, and barley sown with pasture, and sometimes we'll go straight in with the pasture. The amount of barley we grow as a cover crop depends on the need for how much grain we need to store that year. So then at the beginning of 2020, we were of course blessed with the end of the drought, and we were able to let the first lease property go. And then we could just move all of the livestock back to the Narrandera property, which had everything back closer to home. So we've had that property now since beginning of March 2019. So we've just started the 6th year, and these days there's a couple of more videos now that have some lucerne crops and some chicory. If you could put, I don't think they don't come up for me. Can you put them up for me? Has been part of the expansion, ongoing expansion of our sheep breeding flock as we keep establishing pastures. This is a chicory crop that was grown that photo was taken, I think, in November last year.
Going around trying to find lambs.
Made it very hard to find lambs. And then the next video also is of some typical lucerne country, lucerne pastures, where we with ewes on it. So when that comes up shortly. Are you guys getting that one too? Yep. Thank you. Of the lease property in Narrandera, the 5,800 acres, we now have about 4,000 acres that looks like that. So which is a really critical part of running out, keeping the livestock numbers where we are. Okay, so now we're at the point now where our breeding ewe number is now up to 9,000 breeding ewes. Our flock has been non-muled since 2006, and we're breeding a bare-breeched, wrinkle-free, body strike resistant Pole Merino. In 2012, when Andrew and I took over the business, we looked really hard to assess what our sheep were good at and where we stood in the industry. In order to work out what we needed in order to work this out, we needed to start measuring. So we commenced taking significant measurements on our sheep. We've been weighing our stud-born lambs at birth since 2015, which allows us to identify their mothers and confirm their birth status, as in, if scanned twin, are they born a twin, are they born a triplet, and just what their birth status is. We also then commenced maternal behaviour scoring in 2018. So as we tag the lambs at birth and weigh them, we're able to score their dams so maternal behaviour score data is an additional important inclusion in the other reproductive ASBV data, ASBVs that are generated from sheep genetics. We have full pedigree with the 50K genomic testing done through the laboratories, and that pedigree data is submitted to sheep genetics to enhance the pedigree data and accuracy of breeding values. We collect all of other weights collected during the first 12 months of life: a weaning weight, early post-weaning weight, post-weaning weight and yearling weight. We measure for fat and eye muscle depth, breech cover and breech wrinkle, scrotal circumference, the full suite of fleece testing, which is done at Riverina Wool Testers, including comfort factor, staple length, staple strength, yield, coefficient of variation and micron. Visual scores for fleece traits such as colour and character, and visual scores for conformation, which includes feet, toes, pastern legs, shoulders and back, and of course individual worm resistance testing on all stud-born ewes and rams, which is becoming an increasingly more important part of in the welfare traits of sheep for breeding robust and resilient sheep. So we started submitting our data to sheep genetics in 2012. We were aware at that time that our breeding values probably weren't reflecting what the sheep were really like, and we needed to put some further emphasis on introducing external genetics from studs with similar breeding objectives to our own, and allow us to develop linkages for our flock across industry. After decades of selling rams by private treaty, that was my father-in-law, and then Andrew and I for a short time when we first arrived at Aleoburn. We held our first on-farm ram sale in 2017. And this table was just a quick snapshot of data I pulled out last night of data as I've been putting our annual sale catalogue together. I've had the averages of the sale team. So this is not of the whole drop of progeny from any of those years. It's just the data from the rams that were in the sale catalogue that year. And you can see as the data is increasing in its ranking and for various traits, which has been really pleasing to see as we've been making really measurable, tangible changes and changing the genetic base of our flock. In order to take all of these measurements, we use many tools and make the most of what's available to us in the industry. So my father-in-law worked with Dr. Jim Watts for more than 30 years, until his passing in 2019. And since 2019, we've been using Next Gen Agri for consulting and additional advice. We've participated in lots of industry trial work, and we first started working with the people from SIVA, they produce Regulin, which is the melatonin products to be used for out-of-season joined merinos. We started working with them in 2012 and did some of the first trial work over 800 ewes to measure the benefit of using Regulin, and we've continued to use Regulin every year in our autumn lambing ewes. So that's merino ewes that are joined out of season to lamb in the autumn rather than lamb in the spring. We've also done additional field work with SIVA, where we have trialled using Regulin in ewes that are scanned pregnant with multiples, to use that midway through their pregnancy, and to identify if there's benefit to increasing survival rates of multiple born lambs and growth rates on lambs. And there was findings that there is we can have an influence on the vigour of the lambs that are born to multiples, with an 12% increased survival rate of multiple born lambs, and up to a kilo of a higher weaning weights on lambs with ewes that were treated with Regulin. And this was actually supported in a scientific research paper that was published in 2021, on which I got to be one of the writers of that research paper. We've also worked with a company called Senesino, who is a Scottish company who collaborated with the CSIRO to develop the use of a product called numbnuts as a means of pain relief when marking lambs. That we conducted some of the Australian trial work with them at Aleoburn when they were developing the device that the numbnuts would be administered to the sheep with, and we've also then continued to use pain relief at lamb marking ever since then. And one of the main drivers of that was when also in 2018 we achieved Responsible Wool Standard, or RWS, certification on our flock. And one of the requirements for that is wherever possible to use pain relief at lamb marking. We have had, we're currently in the second occasion of having a satellite flock trial for sheep genetics with some of our ewes at Aleoburn. In 2020 and 21, we had green tag ewes who lambed for the first time as ewe lambs in 2020, and we're measuring reproduction and productivity in ewe lambs. And then we had another trial, another satellite flock program that started last year with red tag ewes, and they'll lamb as ewe lambs. They lambed last year, and they'll lamb again this year for the second time as part, and capturing that data for sheep genetics as part of their research. In January this year, we hosted some trial work on methane emissions in sheep, which has been conducted by the University of New England and supported by the MLA, and that's looking to collect data on efficiency and feed conversion and performance of sheep as we continue to look to make sure our sheep are fit for the future and generate, assist in research across industry. We have a ram entered in the 2024 foot health trial, which has been run in conjunction with NextGen Agri, Sheep Metrics and Murdoch University. And we also have a ram in the 2024 Merino Link SAR evaluation, which starts this year on a property at Bathurst. And the host property have their breeding focus on wool traits, growth rates, pole type, pole gene, plain skin types as they transition their flock to non-mulesed. They'll be AIing their ewes at the end of this month, and data will be collected over the next 2 years to get the results in that SAR evaluation program. In order to continue with all of this work and improve the facilities we have available, we have continued to make investments in our own infrastructure with increasing grain storage, establishing a containment feeding area, which we did in 2018, which we did appreciate some funding from the LLS at that time. That was a really critical part of our strategy to cope with the drought as we made the decision to have not sold off our breeding flock and maintain all sheep through the drought. We did in 2023, just last year, we completed our new 6-stand curve raised board wool shed, covered yards, which includes 5-way auto drafter, bulk handler and sheep handler. We have a strong focus on using well-trained, good working dogs. We're constantly looking to create fencing, to create more paddocks to assist with lambing ewe management and grazing management, awareness of storage and conservation of water for both the farming operation and livestock security. And we also have a really great relationship with our current lessor, and we are frequently negotiating ongoing capital improvements for the lease property. One of the major things that will be done in the future will be similarly to what we have at Aleoburn, is establishing a containment feeding area so that we can always aim to preserve the ground cover and look after the land, as well as looking after the sheep. Our total overall goal is to build resilience and flexibility into our business. We do this by maintaining our primary focus on production and genetic development of our dual-purpose pole merinos, and we don't change enterprises to chase markets. We do, though, enjoy a lot of flexibility in the type of sheep that we run, and based on to manage seasonal conditions and market conditions. We will use terminal sires from time to time to optimise cash flow opportunities and have some diversification when we can have products to sell. One of the other critical things that we do with our breeding ewe flock is we also run them over, we run them as two flocks. So we have autumn lambing ewes and spring lambing ewes. All of the stud portion of the ewes are spring lambing. And by doing that, we're able to manage our resources better, which is, so we don't have all of our breeding ewes with the same nutritional requirements at any one time, as they're not all pregnant at the same time and they're not all at peak lactation at the same time. We also then have lambs available to sell over an extended period of time, rather than having all of our lambs born at the same time, potentially being vulnerable to an extreme weather event. We have lambs born over two lambing periods. And then we have lambs to sell over an extended period of time. We usually have lambs to sell over 6 months in each year. We have been 6-monthly shearing since 2014. Autumn lambing ewes have been shorn in March and September. Spring lambing ewes have been shorn in June and December, with all lambs shorn for the first time at 6 to 7 months of age. We are at the moment trialling going back to a 12-monthly shearing on our commercial ewes, and this is in response to what shearing costs currently are versus the fairly average place where wool and lamb prices are at the moment. So it's just another example of we've been able to watch the market, watch what the conditions are, how they're affecting us, and change our business to manage it and allow us to cope with the conditions, which is change in commodity prices and the availability of shearers and the cost of shearing at the moment. We'll keep our stud ewes on 6-monthly shearing because that allows us to optimise the management of them. We also constantly examine all aspects of our business, and we're open to learning and new ideas. We've participated, that's all of us, Andrew, Tom and I, in programs such as Grazing for Profit, Farm Owners Academy. We've attended workshops with Nicole Masters on soil health and biology, and participated in low-stress livestock handling. We always have a plan, and we discuss it constantly. And we also, though, by having a plan, we're always able to change our plan based on seasonal conditions, markets and opportunities. And this is really important to us, to be constantly assessing and looking where we're up to so that we can keep on top of all conditions that are affecting our business and moving forward. So, does anyone have any questions?
Given we're probably just a little bit ahead of time, we could probably take a couple of questions now, if anyone's got anything burning. Yep, you have to go really loud.
Jodie, you just talk us through that foot health program that you got, right?
Yes, so the foot health program is being run by Next Gen Agri, Sheep Metrics, and in conjunction with Murdoch University. And what they're doing is they called for expressions of interest for people to submit, to nominate a sire to participate in the trial. We have those who had their nomination accepted into the trial. We've submitted 40 doses of semen to go to the trial, and so the ewes will be AI'd and to get the progeny on the ground. So then once they have the progeny on the ground, they'll start measuring all of the foot characteristics and traits throughout the lambs, the first 12 months of their life. Once they get to 12 months of age and they've collected all of the data on those sheep, they will expose the weather portion to foot rot. And they will be then by looking for correlations of foot traits, such as toe shape, foot shape, and all of the twist of the hoof, the shape of the pasterns, the overall health of the feet. They'll be looking to measure then the vulnerability or susceptibility of those wethers to foot rot, and see if they can measure and look for a correlation of foot health to resistance to foot rot. And so that the data will be collected over 12 months. Those weather portion will then be sent to an abattoir, and then they'll continue to take measurements on the ewe portion, and the trial will actually go for 2 years. They're AIing this year, and then they'll do it again next year. So they'll collect data over 2 lamb drops for looking for correlations with foot health. And the goal being to ultimately develop a breeding value for foot rot resistance as well. So it's in the early stages, but looking to collect the data to make progress in that space.
Great. Anyone, any other burning questions? No?
No.
Well, thanks, Jodie.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
Just incidentally, with the containment feeding lot that Jodie mentioned, it's actually on a screen and on the VR set on our table at the back. If you want to do a little tour of it, you can talk to Martin. He will show you a virtual tour of that unit, and it's a pretty impressive build, actually, I would say.
Yeah, that was actually, so thank you for bringing that up. Yes, that's the Southern New South Wales Innovation Hub, isn't it? It was actually available in the shed at Henty last year too, wasn't it? And that was, so yes, once the feedlot had been, or the containment feeding area had been in use for a number of years, yes, some people came out and took videos with a drone, and you can actually go and do a full virtual tour of the feedlot out at Aleoburn, and which has been, it was a tremendous resource to allow us to conserve what ground cover we could and get sheep, hold on to our sheep through the drought. And it's now, we also find particularly at the lease property at Narandra, because it was so denuded when we first took it on, when it recovered from the drought, in addition to all of the pastures, there's a lot of grasses. We have actually a lot of seed problem at that place, with corkscrew grass and barley grass, and there's a fair bit of the property that can't be accessed very well because it's too rocky, so it's difficult to manage some of those grasses. So we actually find that we need to use the containment area back at Aleoburn often for weather lambs, to just get them away from the paddocks that cause a problem with the grass seeds, just to keep the grass seeds out of them, because that has in the past been quite a big problem with getting grass seeds into the carcasses of the weather lambs that are going to the abattoirs. Yep.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you, Jodie.
Thank you.
Right,